Hey guys, mate. Midfield premiums are the hardest position to pick every single year. In today's episode, we're going to show you the players on our radar and hopefully they're on yours. Stay tuned. Joe, mate, midfield premiums, it's always a tricky one because I always find there's a big balance between expensive guys and cheap guys. Do you go someone that just, is going to break out, or do you want to go for these selected players? How you doing, mate, and what do you think?
Yeah, good, Jez. Good. I sort of was already forecasting, even towards the back end of last year, of the 2023 season, with all these players who clearly were not going to get forward status anymore. And I was thinking to myself, geez, it's going to make selecting the midfield even harder because now all these players who used to be in the forward line are now all going to be stuck in the midfield, which has now diluted the pool. You now have a lot more options to choose from, which means that competition for spots are tighter than ever. So it is going to be really hard. And for that, we have to be really meticulous, really picky with who we select in there because we can't afford to select duds. Because if we select duds and the competition doesn't, we are left behind the 8 ball, and I don't want to be there again.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, it's probably the first year out of 4 or 5 that we haven't been able to select Dunkley as a forward. So now he's mid only. You were saying before, Rosie, Butters, heck, even like Goulden, all these players that were studs for us last year. Cool. They're mid only. It's a real tricky one this year.
Even Cogs. So, yeah, we've got a lot to go through, and we're not going to waste your time, guys. We're going to jump straight into it. And I know last year, the top guy at this point here was Rory Laird. We both selected him at that inflated price point. In fact, he wasn't. He was cheaper than Marcus Bontempelli. He was just over 700. Marcus Bontempelli, 724, 600, if you don't mind. For me, he is an absolute no-go. I said this many times last year, never again am I paying up that much for a player, especially for one who had to have ankle surgery over the preseason. So Marcus Bontempelli, he's an absolute freak of nature, but he is a non-starter for me. I am skipping him, Big J. I'm skipping him.
Yeah. Well, let us know in the comments if you love Joe's cards. We'll keep them on for the rest of the year. Bont's a real tricky one because if you pick him, there's going to be a price drop, but you're going to get some consistent scoring. If you don't pick him, you have to really factor in, hey, how many of these guys who are high 650K plus players can I actually afford not to start and try and get enough cash to actually bring in? Because you're going to finish your team with Bont in there, right? It's just about when do I actually get him in?
Oh, Bok, of course. I mean, Bont, you want the top scoring mids, and Bontempelli, when he's fit and healthy, is absolutely one of the best scoring mids in the comp. But there's also a bit of value. You're not going to be paying up 724,000 for someone Bontempelli who could be scoring, who could be top 8, but at 724, you're paying a massive premium for him. 724, you're looking at it. If he doesn't go over slightly more than 124 to maintain that price, then you're losing money which you could have used elsewhere. So for me, he's not in my starting side.
Next one we'll have a quick look at is Clayton Oliver. Obviously, he's got a bit of these off-field issues at the moment, so not one that I'm starting, and I don't even know if he'll play the first few weeks, to be honest. We'll kind of see post-Christmas what's up. Moving down the list, Petrarca, Joe. Probably what I'd consider to be the most pickable player, like the most expensive pickable player. 60-odd K less than Bont, which does make a huge difference. Is he kind of in your sights at the moment?
He is the most expensive premium that I reckon is genuinely worthy of selection. I agree with you there. Petrarca is going to be playing without Clayton Oliver, and without him, he went 120 plus. So that is really impressive, and that's what you want from your premium midfielders. And during the stint when Oliver wasn't playing, Melbourne played against some really tough opposition, and Petrarca still performed really well. It seems to be the next stage in
Yeah.
his career, and for that, I'm going to +1. I agree with you, mate. +1 there. He is well and truly on my radar. Very worthy of selection. I still think, though, I can get him cheaper later.
Yeah, and he probably will drop down. I don't think he'll go to sub 600K. He was one alongside Sicily and a couple of others who we might mention today. I didn't own them, and they really, really hurt because they would just go massive. They'd have a quiet half the game. You think, oh yeah, no worries, I'll get in cheaper, punish those people that paid up. No, Petrarca went bang, that was it. And as you say, no Oliver, or at least for a while, and kind of a bit of shake-up, I think, at Melbourne. He's going to score big.
Yeah, he will. There's no doubt about it. Next up, Rory Laird, the one that we started last year, who sort of burnt us. He still performed really well. He was still, as you can see, he's the fourth most expensive mid in the comp. He had a very solid run home, and we know how much of a gun he is. Is he one they're going to start with? Personally, I don't feel 100% confident in starting him with all this news about Matt Crouch now being included in that midfield mix. What's that midfield mix going to look like? Is Sam Berry going to come on? He didn't really come on as strong as we thought he would have last year. Is he going to have suddenly a big jump up over this preseason? So I'm not entirely sure what the Adelaide midfield looks like. And for that reason, for me, I'm skipping him.
Yeah, he's getting a bit older as well. And I feel like towards the second half of the season, he did regress a little bit. Maybe I'm wrong and the fans will let me know, but that's kind of just the feeling that I got. And yeah, I think for that price, there's better options and there's younger options too. These Adelaide players, they know, hey, look, the kids in our club are the ones that have to get better, have to get more ball time, have to get more mid time for our team to do better. Like Rory Laird and Dawson can't carry the team forever. They've got to put time into other people, which means that these older players, these guys who were our premiums a few years ago, they're going to have to start changing roles. And that's kind of why I'm not starting Rory Laird this year.
He's 30 years old.
Yep. He's
And
not spring chicken anymore.
I don't like starting old players. I did talk about this in my resolution in what I'm going to do next year. I'm not going to start old players. Rory Laird, you are now old in my eyes. Zach Merritt isn't as young as he used to be once, but he is in the prime of his career, and he's the fifth most expensive. He's one of the best players in the comp. There's no doubt about it. I know I'm an Essendon supporter who obviously has his natural bias, but I think any objective football fan will know that Zach Merritt is one of the best players in the comp, a great ball user. I think he will score really well this year again, no doubt about it. I think our forward line's better, which could see him getting some more score assists and better disposal efficiency going inside 50. So I think Zach Merritt is certainly one that you can get. However, at 650K, he is likely to drop in price again. So for me, he is one that I am skipping.
Yeah, he's definitely one of those post-buy players. And the last couple of years when I have picked him up post-buy, he's been outrageously good. Like I remember getting him for 520K a few years ago, even last year at like 580K post-buy, and he would just come out pop 140s like it was no one's business. So I'm expecting that from Zach Merritt. But as we kind of said at the start, it's a real numbers game, being able to bring players in and players out. So if I think he's going to score the same as some other people, 50K cheaper, why would I start him over them?
Correct. And he might have some various role changes now and then because us at the Bombers, we have a lot of mids that we've got even drafted. And so we want to give them some midfield minutes. Does that mean Zach Merritt steps out and uses his ball use maybe as a high half forward flanker? That's also a possibility. So for 650K, I don't want to pay for a much better Flanders, but I don't want a high half forward for 650K. So
No,
I'd be skipping him. Nick Dacos, we spoke about in the back line. Get to Tom Libber. What do you reckon about Libber, Big J?
Oh, with Bailey Smith going down and McRae potentially forward, Libber kind of came out of nowhere last year. And I knew it was going to happen and I didn't pick him, which really hurt because he came out of nowhere last year and was fantastic. I think he's a little bit overpriced for what we get, but I think you'll get similar consistent scoring. So it's more the Bevo factor for me. He's definitely a watch and see type player, but not someone that's in my sights to start my side.
He's going to be 32 next year as well. So,
Yeah.
no spring. He's definitely not a spring chicken. So, Libba, I am skipping you, my good friend. Jordan Dawson. He was he had mid defensive status last year, only a midfielder this year. So that makes it slightly more difficult to fit him into the side. And again, we mentioned Matt Crouch before, and that Adelaide midfield mix. What's it going to look like next year? What does that mean for Jordan Dawson? Is it worth spending almost 650K? He is talented. He's got the skill. There's no doubt about it. But what role will he play? God damn it.
I think knowing kind of how teams favour giving the ball to their captains, I think he'll be okay scoring-wise. If you watched my initial team review video, I did actually have him in there to start with. That may get replaced by Petrarca at the moment, but he's very, very expensive for what you get. It's a big wait and see and watch over the preseason and a real analysis of what we actually see in those preseason games to kind of gauge where he's at the moment. Adelaide's in for a shake-up. Others are predicted, definitely playing finals, and that might result in Dawson losing a bit more of that time. He could go back to getting like bulk kick-ins though. So getting a kick-in player like that in the in the midfield would be great.
So I think he's worthy of selection, given that regardless of where he plays, he's still going to play it really well. It's very damaging by foot. So we'll give him the respect he deserves and put him on the field here. But what Uno card I give him, I will reserve judgment there. Josh Dunkley, our beloved Dunks, stuck in the mids, man.
He's a no for me. If he didn't have the early bye, like round 2, it'd be okay. Like an okay pick. I think Lockie Neal, who we'll talk about in a little bit, has regressed a bit, and Dunkley's starting to take that role. But Brisbane post Ashcroft really kind of didn't look that great. And I think Dunkley's role's a little bit up in the air. If he goes back to that clearance beast role, then fantastic. If he goes and does something else, then it's a bit, 50-50. So he's a no. If he drops down to sub 600K, 100%. Post buy, 100%. It could be a first upgrade target, considering, if he comes out round 1 and does well. But to start with, I think there's better options.
It's hard to select him because...
Yeah. Two weeks in, he's not playing.
Like round 1, all right, we're up and running. Round 2, he's not playing. Like it is so bizarre. Like this buy structure has completely shafted Supercoach as we know it. And it is really affecting. Yeah, but it's really affecting how we select our players. So I can't see a world where it would be reasonable having Dunkley, especially if there is a player from Carlton in the midfield, which I think most people should have. We'll be talking about him in a bit. So having another one of him, I don't know. For me, I think it's very unlikely. I'm going to skip him. I know some people were saying that it just so happened that when Ashcroft went out, Dunkley was suffering from a calf, but I don't know. I think it's too much of a drop off, too coincidental for my liking. Zach Butters, I think a lot of people online are talking about how much they love Zach Butters, how exciting he is to own, and how much it really hurt to miss him. And I know I was one of those guys last year, watching him tear it up in the back half of the year, not owning him. So for me, he is in my side, +1.
Yeah, 100%. And that's what he was like for me too. When you didn't have Zach Butters every time he got the ball, I hate hoping these players get injured, but I hope he'd slow down a little bit. Him and Rosie, who we'll talk about soon, have kind of taken over this Port midfield for the better. It got them into finals, and he's going to be a mainstay in our teams for a very, very long time. So if he didn't have the bye, I think it would be a 50-50. But with that magical bye, playing every game until round 13, it's hard not to pick him.
Correct, and it only shares it with Freo. So so Freo and Port players certainly have got an extra advantage when it comes to being selected in our side. That's just the cherry on top for a guy of Zach Butters' caliber, and he's the vice captain now over there at Port Adelaide, going to be leading the charge there with his good friend Connor Rosie. LDU is one that I know a lot of people are saying that this guy could be the big bolter up for that price point, and that he's a gun, underpriced, and
Yeah.
is well and truly on people's radar.
Yeah, he's it really depends for me at least on what happens with LDU in the preseason. He has never really had a full preseason before, always having some injuries or something like that happening. So it's a big wait and see. We have seen some big scores from him though in previous years. He finished the season 11th highest average. So it's not too bad. But if I roll off some of these big scores, 134, 129, 133, the first two games of the season, he got 143, 155. So depending on the matchup and North doing better, he could be a real option there. If you're lucky and you're gutsy and you don't mind spending a trade early to sideways him, pick him because there's enough options around the mark that if he doesn't work out, you can put him to like a Errol Goulden or a Sarong or Tom Green, that kind of thing. But for me, starting off, I want surefire picks. And for a guy with that injury history issues, it's a bit of a no at the moment for me. Yeah, 14 games. So, yeah, big injury worry for me. I prefer not to spend trades sideways in players early. As a North fan, I want him to dominate. I want Nick Dacos. I want LDU Brownlow special next year. Like, that's what I want 100%. But as a Supercoach player, as a coach for Supercoach, I can't do it to myself.
Yep. I agree. I got the +1. I agree with what you said there. I am going to be skipping LDU, and I'm happy to be proven wrong. He's young. I can always pick him up down the track or in another year. No problem there. Errol Goulden, again, one of those amazing forwards from last year. Now moved to the midfield. 111.3 average. He played every game. He is sensational. An absolute star. Again, though, I'm not entirely sure how the midfield is going to shape up over there at the Swans. They've got Grundy, yes, a great ruckman, but they added James Jordan and they added Taylor Adams. So that midfield now, they've got more chefs in the kitchen, more cooks, I don't know what you want to call it, a lot more of the pill to be shared around. So what does that mean for Errol Goulden? I'm not entirely sure. And for 622K, I don't want to take that risk. I'm much more happier to assess later down the track. For me, he's a skip.
Yeah. I think with Grundy coming in, it's only going to make it better. Last year, there were some issues with Hickey, and Naismith, I think, came in once or twice, and they had McAndrew at points and just kind of nothing happening. So Sydney, made finals without a ruckman, which is hilarious. But Errol Goulden, as you say, one of those forward line guys who were fantastic last year. I'm holding back. He's not in my calculations at the moment. But if he comes out and goes bang in the preseason, I think you kind of have to. I think that's our starting teams are going to be swayed a lot by these round zero games and what's going to happen. It could happen a bit with Sydney and him. He is Sydney's most expensive player by quite a big margin as well. So something to factor in there. Kind of like he is their guaranteed best player.
Okay. And he's playing in round zero, as you say. So we get a free look at it. So he'll play. So he plays here. He'll get his price rise in round 2. And then he'll play another 2 games before having that bye. So it's a little bit weird, a little bit odd, I guess, with the timing. But yeah, he's one to definitely have a look at in round 0. Caleb Sarong he's a great player. I think he really came out last year, broke out, took that next stage in his career, cracked the 110 average. The exact same average as Tom Green, who everyone is raving about, and we love him so much here at the Centre Bounce. But Caleb Sarong sort of going under the radar a little bit. Plus, he plays for Fremantle, which, as we have discussed, gives him that beautiful bye with Port Adelaide. So, look, if we think that there's going to be another step, another year of progression in Caleb Sarong, could push that average even more. He played just about every game last year. Did really well. I think he missed 1 game with suspension. So I like Caleb Sarong. I am not going to be skipping here. And I'm not saying skip him. I definitely think he is worthy of selection.
I think you need a wild card. Just be like, make your own decision because it's too tricky, and I'm kind of there on the mark. I feel like that's the same thing with me. He never really was in my team last year, and Brayshaw was at times, or at least kind of around the mark. More people are going towards him, but Caleb Sarong could be the sneaky pod. We might find our teams, playing 2 lots of Butters and Rosie and then Sarong and Brayshaw, just because everyone else is more expensive.
Yeah, for 621K, I think it's a very fair price. We moved to Tom Green, who I think you can't not discuss. Is the one kind of is.
Yeah.
You can't not discuss him. Star, freak, contested animal. I loved him to bits. And Jonas, I'm looking at you, mate. When you kept talking down Tom Green, I always had his back, and he repaid the faith. So, Tom Green, man, what a man.
He's a very good player. He's only getting better. Look at the age demographic of that GWS team. The rest of the midfielders are getting old. He's going to take over. And now he's got, an actual ruckman for a majority of the year who's going to be tabbing the ball down to his head. So, yeah, Tom Green's a lock for me to start. Does have an early buy, so it's something to manage, but it really depends on how many GWS players so GWS and Gold Coast players you have. That would probably be the only deciding factor. If I didn't start him, he would be an instant, get him in round 7, round 8, kind of first lot of upgrades if you could.
Yeah, because he'll play round 0, he'll play round 1, play round 2, and then he'll have his buy. But at this point, he would have had a price rise. So it's an interesting selection again, interesting time period. But you're not picking Tom Green to trade him out later. You're picking Tom Green because you reckon he's going to be a top 8 to 10 mid. Lockie Neal, look, he's a skip for me. He was a skip for me last year. He's a skip for me this year. Another year into him. And without Ashcroft, it's amazing how much impact Ashcroft had on that Brisbane Lions side as soon as he went out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a genuine upgrade target depending on kind of how Brisbane's going and whatnot. I don't think they're going to have a slump after the grand final, but potentially they could. If Lockie Neal gets to 550K, come when they start upgrading, it's going to be hard to pass him. But to start with, it's a no for me.
Yep, agreed. Andy Brayshaw, I think we're happy to put him on the field here. Andy Brayshaw, one of the best two-way runners in the comp, a 109 average, just over 600K. I think, again, playing for Fremantle, got that beautiful buy. I think he's right to go, to be honest.
Yeah, I think he's the one that, at that price, alongside a Tom Green and a few others, is going to be really hard to not pick. And I think those that don't have him to start with are going to be scrambling a little bit to actually get him into their sides. So he's a starter for me. If he gets injured or something, then of course I'll trade him out. But as one of those guys that you can kind of plan your team around and plan, even if you don't have him for the whole year, keep him till round 14 when his buy happens and then trade him out. He provides real value there.
Yeah, that'll be a luxury there. Adam Chera. I'm not really seeing much discussion about Chera. And I agree.
It's a tricky one.
I wouldn't have him.
Yeah, I think his scoring, from what I've heard, went up when Walsh went out. Chera became, a pick for a certain period of time. Walsh is back. Walsh is training. So he might be just inflated in price. We don't know what that midfield's going to look like at Carlton. So it's a wait and see, but a no pick for right now.
Yeah. Darcy Parish, I'll say, is a no pick for me as well. I love Darcy Parish as much as the next Bomber supporter. But for me, the thing holding him back, ultimately, I think, is the fact that he just doesn't play a full season. I think he tends to get niggles here and there quite often. I think his game definitely suits Supercoach. He is a contested ball winner. He does get a lot of clearances. We've added Todd Goldstein, who I think will be getting some great... I think he's the best ruckman that Darcy Parish has ever played with in his career. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a nice hit out to advantage combination thing between him and Goldie. But at the same time, I want to make sure I've got the best of the best, and I'm more than happy to miss Darcy Parish at the start if it means that later down the track, for example, if he's around, I can upgrade someone to him. I think Darcy Parish is one that he's not gonna harm you if you miss him in the beginning. So for him, I skip him.
Yeah, it's going to be a bit of a tricky one because I know Sammy Draper's been injured for a little while. What happens with him? What happens with Goldie? Does Goldie favour Zach Merritt over Parish? It did feel like a little bit with some other people last year coming into that side. Parish got moved around a little bit as well compared to where Zach Merritt was basically just smack bang in the middle. So maybe that factors a little bit into it. But one of those skip over players. If he ends up being 500k at some point, I'll pick him up, but yeah, not to start with.
I don't think he'll get that cheap. I think he's much too
We'll
good
see.
to get to that cheap. But yeah, we'll have a look and see. Adam Treloar,
Just skip.
He's like
Pass.
one soft tissue injury away from career ending. So
Hey, he's going to walk his dog and injure himself. Like it's a no for me. The best thing that came out of Adam Treloar was that Dunks and Treloar podcast series that lasted for about a year before Dunkley went off to Brisbane. So yeah, sorry, mate.
Correct. I've put Connor Rozee on the field here. I reckon this guy, he is a class act. He is super talented. You can see the leadership and leaders step up. I think everyone at Port Adelaide respects him. And as you mentioned, Jez, Big J, before, when teams love having given their captain the ball, giving them all of the ball to Connor Rozee, who is very durable, didn't miss a game last year as well. I think for his price point at 601k, I think there's value there, to be completely honest with you. And he also has that magical buy. So for me, he is absolutely a +1.
Yeah, it really just depends to see kind of what's going to happen with him in that, midfield mix. Because I know that Rozee and Butters did score big at times last year for a lot of the time, really. But they did play some of that forward line as well. So if they go pure mid, fantastic, like lock them in. But you're picking at least one of them. It just depends which one and kind of the makeup of the team.
Or you could get both. Or you could get both and handcuff yourself.
At least one means that you can pick both.
True. Make sure that you get the one that pops off.
Yes.
Tim Taranto is a skip for me. He was great in the forward line, but I'm not picking him as a pure mid. Not with that disposal efficiency. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So the disposal efficiency is a real killer. But speaking to Swizz in our Richmond video, he's a big lover of Taranto next year. Reckons that he came in maybe with the wrong mindset, or the team was a bit funny under Dimmer. But he's got big high hopes for Taranto. So I wouldn't kill him off as yet. But as a starting pick, I think there's much better options.
Correct. I'm much more interested in Noah Anderson than I am Tim Taranto, to be honest. He's getting a refreshed Dimmer Hardwick, who could see Anderson take that next step. He took a next step in his career already. He broke the 100 average. He's got basically 105. Under Dimmer Hardwick, could we see him crack the 110 this year? I'm really keen to see how he plays in round 0. For me, I am not going to be playing. This is going to be my first reverse. I'm sort of going to step back a little bit and watch very closely how he goes.
Yeah, for me as well, I think if he didn't have the early buy, it would be an option, right? If you could have a look at it in the preseason, whatever, see what Dimmer wants to do. Because I think I think Tuke Miller, who we'll talk about soon, is really going to be the one that determines what's going to happen. If Miller does well, Anderson might fall down a little bit, vice versa. What does Dimmer want to do? But Anderson is the future for this club. So it has to be in your considerations at some point. Doesn't have a great buy later on into the season, which might affect a lot. But as we've said, right, would you rather pick Connor Rozee, who you know has a good buy, has the previous scoring, is now the captain, is now going to dominate the preseason, do quite well, or for 15k less, pick Noah Anderson? Like,
that's the question.
You'd almost want to go down to Sam Walsh, who's had an injury-affected season last year, and get better value out of him than Noah Anderson.
Oh, Sam Walsh is... I should get a +4 or something. Like Sam Walsh is him. That final series he had last year was just insane. So, Sam Walsh for 576k, if you don't mind. Yes, please. Thank you very much. Yeah. Come see you again tomorrow. Don't come back. No refunds. No nothing. Just give me.
He's very cheap. He's very good. Just depends on what happens with that midfield makeup and what's going to happen there. But yeah, there's going to be a lot of people picking Sam Walsh early. It's going to affect Chera, Doherty, Cripps, who we'll probably won't even talk about. He's probably the pick of these guys at sub 600k.
Yeah, for sure. Tim Kelly playing for the West Coast Eagles is, I don't know, a lot of responsibility going to be put on his plate. He did really well last year, but I'm not paying up
No.
574K for someone who could go 100 to 105. If you're going to go this low, you want someone to take a next step in their career, and that could be a Matt Rowell, perhaps.
Well, you just pick Sam Walsh. Like, why would you pick Tim Kelly and not pick Sam Walsh? Like,
correct. There's no doubt about it. Matt Rowell is potentially an option.
Yeah.
Under Dimmer Hardwick, does he take that next step in his career? Again, someone that you're going to have a look and see. But really,
I've heard
these guys,
a running coach as well, so we'll see.
Yeah, exactly. I was talking about Tuka Miller, who you mentioned before, absolute superstar. Again, keep a close eye on him. Really, out of these guys, I don't really think any of them.
I've seen a few people consider Jai Newcomb as maybe someone who's going to step up. Will Day potentially as well. But I think outside of that, I mean, you've got your Jack Steele at 529K, who's very underpriced if he actually comes back to form. You've got your Tom Mitchell potentially the same. You've got a few of these other players, even at Cripps at 545K, similar to what he was last year, I think. So there is some value at that. You could go, Jack Steele, if you just didn't have money for anyone else. But moving down the list, we'll talk about Sam Flanders in our forward line video. I've seen a few people jump on the Matt Crouch train. He's not for me, but I mean, we're always swayed by preseason form and whatnot. So
correct.
He's not on my watch list. Talk to us about Carl Amon, Joe.
Carl Amon, by reports, is going to be playing in from the back line. He's not going to be playing exclusively on a wing. He's going to be as helping back there as well as having some time on a wing. He's sort of had a bit of that already in 2023, where he'd alternate between playing on a wing or playing halfback flank. So, and in the games where he played off halfback, he scored really well, like really, really well, over 100. I'm talking. So, if he is confirmed that he's going to be playing more halfback than on a wing, then Carl Amon at 483K is absolute value, because at 483 divided by roughly 5.8, he's priced about 83, and he could go over 100. So he could be making you a good $100,000 from this point on, which could then see him be upgraded to a premium mid. So Carl Amon he is a watch and see. He is a step back, analyze, and have a look very closely what sort of role he's going to play, because there is definitely value there with Matt Crouch.
I've seen some people say, hey, look, I'll pick him at this cheaper price in the midfield at like an M5, M6 option, with the hopes that I can just get him DPP, the first lot of DPPs, and then he goes to the back line, which could happen, and end up a keeper in that spot for that price. So definitely wait and see.
Absolutely. Matt Crouch, I'm not entirely... Look, Matt Crouch just sort of back your gut, I guess. This is my... he's a wild card there. Obviously, when he played in the midfield in the last 6 games of the season last year, was given a lot of CBAs, a lot of responsibility, and he scored a lot of points. But is it enough for him to warrant one of those precious selections there in your midfield? For me, I'm not going to go there. But for you, trust your heart. Trust your gut.
Well, that's it. Moving down the list, there probably isn't anyone left. I know Joe loves Will Setterfield, so if he wants to go on about Will Setterfield and say, hey, why isn't he picked for however long, I can ramp on with that. But as we say, guys, what do you think? What do you reckon, guys? Let us know in the comments. Hey, is there someone that we should have picked that we didn't pick? Who's this premium Joe? I love Dunkley. He's going to go and score 150. Why didn't you pick him? Let us know down in the comments, guys.
100%. And if you have any questions about any particular premiums that we haven't discussed, even the ones that we have, if you think that we haven't gone in more detail and you have any other questions, please do not hesitate to let us know in the comments down below. A like would greatly appreciate it. If you're new, a subscription greatly help the growth of our channel, which we're continuing to grow. We're looking to hit our next milestone of 2,000 subs. So please, guys, help us on our journey, and we'll certainly help you get the hard work done, because that's what we do here. Isn't that right?
Yeah, we do the hard work, so you guys don't have to.
Bye for now, guys.